towards the end there. Was there a point where you did feel comfortable in the race today? No.
There wasn't 1 second, no.
So how hard is it then? What are you dealing with in the car, and how much work is there to do?
Clearly the car is capable of being P3, so Charles did a great job today, so I can't blame him for that.
You don't have any idea why it's just not happening for you?
Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, is experiencing one of the most intense challenges of his career. Is he in crisis with Ferrari? Is this the beginning of the end, or the prelude to an epic comeback? Lewis Hamilton arrived at Ferrari with monumental expectations, to revive the Scuderia's glory and close his career with a flourish. But the reality has been much harsher than anyone imagined. From the first practice sessions in Jeddah, something wasn't right. Hamilton, accustomed to fighting for pole positions, found himself stuck in 13th place, unable to get close to the leader's times. Most alarming, he couldn't even match the pace of his teammate, Charles Leclerc. Throughout the weekend in Saudi Arabia, Hamilton couldn't break out of that limbo of frustration. In every session, his name appeared at the bottom of the leaderboard. Q3 seemed impossible, but he arrived. Not because of speed, but almost by miracle. And when he achieved 7th place, his reaction wasn't one of relief or pride. It was one of resignation. He made it clear with his words, "I haven't been anywhere all weekend, so I'm grateful to have made it to Q3 and P7. For anyone, finishing 7th in a Ferrari might seem acceptable. For Lewis Hamilton, 7-time champion, it's a direct blow to his pride. He didn't come to Ferrari to survive the weekends. He came to win, to dominate, to return to the top. And instead, he's facing one of the most complex stages of his career. The frustration became even more evident when he was asked if he had any hope for the race. He didn't talk about pace or strategy. He talked about faith. Praying more like, he said with a mixture of irony and despair. That phrase sums it all up. Hamilton isn't racing. He's struggling to understand a car that doesn't speak his language. The SF-25 is a machine that doesn't respond to him, forcing him to relearn concepts he had mastered for years at Mercedes. It's as if he had to unlearn everything he knew and start from scratch. And that, for someone with his career, is a monumental challenge. Because it's not just about speed. It's about identity. Who is Lewis Hamilton if he can't squeeze the most out of a car? Can he reinvent himself at this point? The answer is on the way, but for now, the toughest battle isn't against Red Bull or Verstappen. It's against his own car. Hamilton's problem with the Ferrari SF-25 isn't superficial. It's not a matter of a single error or a bad strategy. It's something deeper. Something hidden at the very root of the car's behavior. The telemetry starkly reveals everything. Corner after corner, sector after sector, the Briton loses key tenths of a second. Especially in Sector 1 and Sector 3 of the Jeddah circuit. This is where his disadvantage over Leclerc becomes glaring. In fast corners, where a driver must blindly trust the car's response, Hamilton lifts. He's more conservative. He protects himself. While Leclerc launches the car decisively into turn 4 or 8, Hamilton hesitates. That small difference in confidence in Formula 1 translates into lost time that is never recovered. And it's not that he's forgotten how to drive. It's that the SF-25 doesn't talk to him. It doesn't give him feedback. It doesn't offer him that immediate connection he had for years with Mercedes. But it's not just about sensations. There's a technical element that makes the difference: the engine braking system. Ferrari and Mercedes approach this critical part of the car in completely different ways. The SF-25 uses engine braking as a key tool to stabilize the car and prepare for corner exit. Hamilton, on the other hand, came from an environment where this function was minimal, almost secondary. Now he's forced to change his braking style, his pedal modulation, and the way he prepares for each corner. And that doesn't happen overnight, not even for a 7-time champion. This imbalance is most noticeable in turns 1 and 2. There, at the start of the lap, the car doesn't respond as Hamilton expects. There's no immediate grip. The front tires don't reach the ideal temperature, and the result is brutal understeer. The car doesn't turn in. It opens up. And Hamilton is forced to take a cautious approach, losing half a second before completing the first sector. A half second he can never recover. The comparison with Verstappen on that same track is devastating. Max enters aggressively, trusts the RB20, and dominates it. Hamilton, on the other hand, struggles with a car that doesn't deliver what he demands. At turn 10, for example, Verstappen is already at full throttle, while Lewis is still regulating the throttle, searching for traction, waiting for the car to stabilize. History repeats itself corner after corner. While others attack, he manages. While others gain time, he loses it. All this not because of a lack of talent, but because of a lack of connection. And in Formula One, that connection is what makes the difference between glory and mediocrity. The SF-25 isn't a bad car, but it's not easy either. Leclerc understood that before. Hamilton is still in that process. And in that process, every 10th lost is a blow to the ego, a reminder that the road to the top will be longer and harder than he imagined. Ferrari didn't arrive in Saudi Arabia empty-handed. The team prepared a series of technical updates that, on paper, were designed to improve the SF-25's performance on a circuit like Jeddah, where aerodynamic efficiency is key. Changes to the rear wing, a new flap, a redesigned version of the beam wing aerodynamic details that, while subtle at first glance, can completely transform a car's on-track behavior. But here's the dilemma. While Charles Leclerc quickly adapted to these changes, Hamilton struggled session after session to understand how the car behaved. The modifications Ferrari introduced weren't universal. Each driver tried different setups. Hamilton, for example, had to deal with a version of the aerodynamic package that simply didn't give him the balance he needed. And in Formula One, a few laps without confidence can ruin an entire weekend. The redesigned rear wing sought to reduce straight-line drag without compromising cornering downforce. A logical idea for a track like Jeddah. However, that adjustment also changed the car's behavior under braking, stability, and especially in fast corners, where Hamilton had already been struggling. While Leclerc was getting the most out of the new package from the first practice session, Hamilton needed time. A lot of time. And the stopwatch doesn't wait. Furthermore, the new beam wing had a slimmer shape, designed to maximize top speed. But that meant a more nervous car, more delicate at the rear. And when you're in the middle of an adaptation process, the last thing you need is an unpredictable car. Hamilton had no room for error. Every micro-adjustment required mental recalibration. And that wear and tear, that invisible effort that can't be seen on screen, is what makes his 7th place finish more valuable than many would like to acknowledge. The real challenge wasn't just technical. It was psychological. While his teammate found confidence in the car's evolution, Hamilton was forced to go back to basics. To rethink each corner. To understand which part of the new package was working in his favor and which was sabotaging him. The SF-25 floor, introduced weeks earlier in Bahrain, was also key. It allowed the car to run lower, generating greater downforce without penalizing straight-line pace. But adjusting that height, configuring the car down to the last millimeter, is an art that requires complete coordination between driver and engineers. And Hamilton, still seeking harmony with his new team, didn't have that instant connection. Ferrari offered tools, yes, but the way they introduced them didn't favor Hamilton. Not because of a lack of will, but because of a detail that is everything in Formula One. Timing. In a team like Ferrari, it's not enough to simply bring improvements. It's vital that each driver can integrate them quickly. And in that regard, the team failed him. They gave him a car that was evolving, but without sufficient support for him to evolve at the same pace. This isn't just a story of new parts and tweaked wings. It's a story of how context can turn any improvement into a trap. And how, even with all the data and resources, the result still depends on a fragile connection. The one between the driver and his machine. After a weekend as complex as Jeddah, the big question isn't whether Hamilton can improve. The question is whether he'll do so in time. Whether he'll find that connection with the SF-25 before the pressure, criticism, and impatience completely drown him out. Because if Formula One has proven anything, it's that it waits for no one. Not even the greatest. The context, however, is not entirely bleak. There are signs, small but important, that suggest Hamilton's rebirth could be closer than it seems. Since his arrival at Ferrari, one constant has been: his race pace has always been superior to his qualifying performance. Even in Saudi Arabia, where he started from 7th place, Hamilton's real plan wasn't designed for Saturday. It was reserved for Sunday. Ferrari knows this. The team has begun to consider split strategies between its two drivers, Leclerc attacking from the front, Hamilton with room to improvise. That could mean an early pit stop to perform the famous undercut, or perhaps a long run, stretching the tires to the maximum while waiting for a safety car. Jeddah is a street circuit, yes, but it's one of the fastest. And history shows that incidents are common. That's where Hamilton's experience can make the difference. There's also a psychological element at play. If he makes early overtakes, if he finds pace, if he feels the car starting to respond, everything changes. In Formula One, confidence is as powerful as engine power. And in the race, Hamilton is a master at managing his tires, reading his rival's behavior, knowing when to attack and when to wait. Another factor in his favor is the uncertainty surrounding the rest of the grid. McLaren, for example, showed speed on one lap, but its performance on a long run remains a mystery. Norris, affected by an accident in Q3, will start from 10th position. That leaves Hamilton a clear track ahead, with room to build his pace without being under direct pressure from behind. A detail that may seem minor, but in the race, it can change the fate of an entire strategy. And if conditions allow it, if the car enters the ideal temperature window, if the aerodynamic setup starts to click, then yes, we could see Hamilton's true potential with Ferrari. He already did it in China when everyone thought he was lost, and he ended up winning the sprint race. It was a flash, a warning. Because even if he's not comfortable, even if he's still searching for the limit, Lewis Hamilton hasn't forgotten how to win. What comes in the next 5 or 6 races will be decisive. Not just for the championship, but for the legacy of one of the most successful drivers of all time. Will this be the final chapter of a giant who failed to adapt? Or the beginning of a legendary comeback, built on courage, intelligence, and evolution? No one has that answer. But every lap, every adjustment, every race, he's bringing that answer closer. Lewis Hamilton is writing one of the most intense and personal chapters of his career. This isn't the driver who dominated from the first minute, who turned every qualifying session into a formality and every race into a lesson. This is a Hamilton in conflict, with his car, with his surroundings, with himself. But he's also a more human Hamilton, more vulnerable, and for that very reason, more dangerous to his rivals. The story of the champion who comes to Ferrari with a mission isn't on hold. It's under construction. Step by step, with mistakes, frustrations, and moments of doubt. But also with small advances, surgical adjustments, moments where the old brilliance reappears. And when that happens, when the car and the driver finally meet, the result can be devastating for the rest of the field. Because there's one thing that doesn't change regardless of the team, the car, or the circumstances. Lewis Hamilton is still hungry. Hungry for victory. Hungry to prove he can still win. That he still wants to. That he hasn't come to Ferrari to retire quietly, but to rewrite his legend in a red jersey. The paddock knows it. His rivals sense it. And even though it now seems far away, that the mountain is too high, that the numbers don't add up, that story isn't over yet. The next races aren't just another stage of the championship. They are the terrain where it will be decided whether this transition is a fall or a resurrection. And if there's anyone capable of turning the impossible around, it's Hamilton. Not because the statistics say so, but because time and again when no one believed in him, that's when he came back stronger. The fight isn't over. It's just beginning.